Hello, and welcome to the first in a series of videos that will guide you through how and when to collect data for tribal prep programming in Wisconsin. This is video 1 of 4. Please follow along with your tribal prep data collection protocol for Facilitators Packet. This packet can be found in your binder, so when you open up your binder, in the first tab, you'll see Facilitator Packet. If you open that tab, then you'll see Tribal Prep Data Collection Protocol for Facilitators. And it's 1, 2, 3 pages. So this packet gives detailed information that, when supplemented with these YouTube videos, should provide you with everything you need to successfully collect and report data. As you move through the packet, start with step 1 and finish with step 4. So you'll see that the front of your packet should look very similar to the picture here on the slide. So before we begin talking about data collection, let us introduce ourselves. Tribal Prep is funded by a federal grant from the Family and Youth Services Bureau, which is within the Administration for Children and Families. The Tribal Prep grant was awarded to the Great Lakes Intertribal Council, or GLITC, and they contracted with the Population Health Institute at the University of Wisconsin-Madison to conduct evaluation activities. I'm Lindsay Weymouth, and along with Miranda Manzanares and Jennifer Nunez, will help you collect and report data throughout your programming. Our contact information is located on the first page of your Facilitator Packet, so please call us or email us anytime with questions or comments. We are here to help you. So there are many goals of the Tribal Prep evaluation, but first let's back up and briefly discuss the goals of Tribal Prep programming. The Tribal Personal Responsibility Education Program, or Tribal Prep, promotes proven and culturally appropriate methods for reducing adolescent pregnancy, delaying sexual activity among youths, and increasing abstinence and contraceptives among sexually active youth in Native communities. Programs are specifically designed to honor tribal needs, traditions, and cultures. Competitive grants are available to tribes to combat disproportionately high teen pregnancy and birth. In Wisconsin, we'll be using the Discovery Dating and Circle of Life curriculums. So, at the federal level, data is reported at the group level, which means all the data collected from all the students is combined to determine success of the tribal prep programming at a national level. At the county and tribal level, we're interested in whether each program is delivering its intended outcomes, mainly reducing at-risk behavior associated with reproductive and sexual health. We're also interested in identifying community strengths and opportunities for sustainability of programming, or the continued implementation of programming after the grant period has ended. So now that you know who we are and the goals of the Tribal Prep evaluation, let's begin learning about data collection. As mentioned previously, there are 4 steps to data collection. We'll start with step 1. You can view videos 2, 3, and 4 to learn about the subsequent steps of data collection and reporting. Okay, step 1, here we go. And before we go any further, just remember to contact us with any questions along the way. We're happy and eager to help you. So step 1, or the start of data collection. So step 1 is completed before you start your class. Ideally, like a week before, you will have completed step 1. In step 1, you'll be making a note of which students' parents or caregivers have opted them out of the evaluation, meaning they don't want their children to fill out any surveys. If you're teaching programming in school during school hours, you will just send home a flyer, and unless you hear back from parents saying they opt their kids out of the evaluation activities, you can just assume that everyone can fill out the surveys. If you're conducting programming after school or in a community setting, you will need a consent form that is signed from each parent in order to have their children fill out the surveys. So to go into a little bit more depth about the consent process, consent is simply a parent's permission for a child to be in the evaluation portion of programming. So again, if you're conducting your programming in school during school hours, we'll be using something called passive parent consent. And this just means that you send home a consent form that looks a lot like the one here on the screen. And unless you hear back from parents saying, I'd rather not have my kid fill out surveys, you're good to go. You can assume that the children in your class can participate and fill out the surveys. However, if you're teaching the program after school or at a community organization outside of school hours, you will need something called active parent consent. And this is simply when you send home a form with the children and their parents return it, signing the form saying that they can fill out the surveys. So you'll need a form for each student. If you don't receive a form back, or if you receive a form back with the box checked that said, I'd rather not have my child fill out the surveys, then that child can't fill out any surveys, and you would just not hand out a survey packet to that child. And I should also mention that a copy of the consent form is in the last tab of your binder, so you can make copies if you need them. Okay, so after you know which students you'll collect data from, you need to assign them ID numbers. ID numbers help protect students' privacy and confidentiality. And essentially, we'll be using an ID number system for tribal prep. And so instead of writing students identifying information on their surveys, such as their name or their phone number or their parent's name, we're just going to give them a number. And then they'll just be that number. That number will already be written on their surveys, so that if someone else was to get their hands on the surveys, they wouldn't know which student filled it out. So for tribal prep, we'll be using 6 or 7 digit ID numbers. And each number signifies a specific thing in our ID. So the first number of the ID signifies the county in which the student is in, then the site, then which curriculum they're receiving, who the facilitator is, and finally a unique number that identifies that student. So for example, in this ID, you'd have county 1, site 1, curriculum 1, facilitator 2, participant 01. It's really important to note that IDs are never reused. They're only assigned to one student. So for example, if you had a student drop out midway through your programming, you would never ever reassign that number. That student would just keep that number, and we would give a new number to any additional students who enter the program. You will only have to assign the participant portion of the ID, so the last couple numbers of the ID string there. To assign IDs, you'll need to log into REDCap, and if you haven't received your login name and password, contact us ASAP and we'll get that going for you. So at this time, locate your data entry guide for Step 1 packet. It's behind your Facilitator packet in your binder in the first tab there, and follow along with us. It looks a lot like what's pictured here on this slide. Additionally, if you have your login, log into REDCap using the link provided here. It will definitely help if you can follow along as I'm talking you through this. Okay, so once you have your data guide from your packet, you can log into REDCap. And once you log into REDCap, you should see a screen that looks a lot like my screen here. And your first step is going to be to click on My Projects up at the top. And you'll see Step 1 in a red box there. So go ahead and click on My Projects. Which is right here. and then click on attendance right here. So once you've clicked on attendance, you will see this screen, and you'll want to next click on View, Edit, and Records, which is right here. This might also say Add or Edit Records. Regardless of what it says, go ahead and click on that link. So once you click on that link, your screen will look a lot like mine does, and you'll want to select Add New Record. And adding a new record basically just means you're going to create a new file for a student. So after you click Add New Record, your screen will look like this, and you'll select the radio button to assign IDs. And the radio button are these little guys right here, these round dots. So you'll select whatever your site is, and you actually won't see all these other sites that are implementing curricula, so you'll just select the one that you're using. So go ahead and select that one, and then you will see the next page. So once you see this page, you can move through by assigning a participant ID using this drop-down menu here. You can look at step 6 to help you through this portion. So you'll select an ID here, and you'll also fill out the date assigned, which would be whatever day you're doing this. And then you'll also put in the student's name right there. All of this stuff, the phone number, the address, the primary caregivers, you'll find out this information later, so for now you can just leave that blank. Okay, so after you click Save and you exit that form, you have entered data for the first student. And you'll want to enter data for the remaining students by kind of using the similar steps we talked about. So you'll go back to View, Edit Records, and you'll click on that. And then you'll click Add a New Record. So first you'll start here, and then you'll click Add a New Record here. And then you'll just move through the steps of assigning the ID, assigning the date, typing in the student's name, and saving and exiting the form, and then adding a new one until you have added information for all your students. So after you've assigned your IDs, you'll need to check your paperwork. So regardless of whether you're teaching discovery dating or Circle of Life, every student will need to fill out a student information form. So the student information form contains contact information, and this would help us contact a student if he or she were to drop out of programming and we wanted to follow up with them. Otherwise, there's no real use for this type of information. Again, we're only contacting them if necessary. You'll also have students fill out surveys, and these are used to assess change in the students from pre to post test, or from the beginning of the program to the end of the program. So the information form, you will keep this form and you'll enter the information into REDCap. And you're essentially just going back to the steps we just went over, and you're filling in the rest of the information, such as the student's phone number, address, and names of primary caregivers. After you're done typing in this information into REDCap, you can store in a secure, safe location. We don't need you to send the forms to us. Also, it's important to note that you don't need to write the student's ID number on this form. We want to keep the ID number and their identifying information separate. The only place that they're linked is in that one file in REDCap. Okay. So in addition to the student information form, we'll be asking students to fill out surveys. So if you're teaching Circle of Life, you'll have your kids fill out one survey. If you're teaching Discovery Dating, your children will fill out 2 surveys. Surveys are pre-organized and they come in manila envelopes. And each student will receive an envelope with his or her student ID number, which is what you assigned in red cap. All the surveys already have the ID numbers on them, so you don't have to worry about having students write anything that would identify themselves on their surveys. They just simply have to fill out the questions. So you can see here in this picture, in the manila envelope, students' IDs are located here and then also here on each survey. So that's already done for you. Surveys are also color-coded just to make things easier as you're going through. So for example, if you're teaching Discovery Dating, you can say, please pull out your orange form. We're going to go over that one first, and then we're going to do the pink form. So hopefully that helps you. We also gave you more envelopes than you need in case you have students join the program a little bit later, or a student kind of messed up on their survey and they want to try with a new one. You have some copies there. You also have copies in your binder itself, so if you need to make copies, those are available to you. Okay, so those are all the steps you need to complete before your first day of class, and I will meet you over in step 2.